So I've had a lot of people ask me about how I breed my bearded dragons. I made a video a while back about 10 things you need to know before you start breeding bearded dragons. This video is going to be more about what you need to know if you want to start actually breeding your bearded dragons, like what the action is, what you have to do before, what things you have to look for, because while it may seem simple, like you just put the dragons together, there's a lot more that goes into it that most people don't understand. And that's why you have a lot of people out there that put two dragons together and they get unhealthy babies, or they don't actually get the offspring they want out of that pairing. So, what is it that you need to look for? What is it that you need to do? Uh, so, before all of that, let me just give you kind of a synopsis of the 10 things you need to know. So you just need to know the best you can to your ability of genetics. So just do as much research as you can before you start breeding your bearded dragons. So as far as genetics, you need to make sure the bloodlines are compatible. You need to make sure that they don't have any defects. They don't have any issues as far as health issues like respiratory infections, parasites, and stuff like that. Because for a male, it may not be so severe, but a female, when they go through the laying process and the building process, they will deteriorate a lot. And if they have other things that they're going on in their bodies, like respiratory infections or parasites, then they will probably not make it after they lay. So you got to be aware of all of that, especially with calcium deficiency and anything like that as well. So genetics, all of that. Once you have that all put together and your collection's ready to go and your animals are healthy and they're of good size, make sure your females are at least 350 grams. 400 grams is the ideal weight. The bigger the female, the healthier the eggs are going to be, the more eggs you're going to get. The healthier the female, the nicer your clutch is going to be as well. I have had clutches in the past where it's been like 18 eggs and like 7 of them were infertile. And that could have been a number of things. It could have been that the female didn't get enough semen from the male, or she wasn't healthy enough to produce healthy eggs, and that's just how it came out. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a gist of what I do. Before I start pairing my bearded dragons, I make sure that they're healthy. So after brumation season, I actually deworm all of my bearded dragons just to make sure that they're not going to have parasites when I start breeding them. After they brumate, I usually wait about a month for them to get acclimated to the light, to get acclimated to the schedule, get acclimated to eating and pooping regularly and all of that, and then I start breeding them. So usually with males, the thing about males is males may get to maturity way sooner than females. So I've had males uh, start getting to that phase of wanting to breed about 150 grams, 200 grams, and you can try pairing them that early, but it might not work out. They might be too immature. They might be too aggressive with the females, or the females might think they're not dominant enough, and then it doesn't work out either way. So usually I want my males to be around 300 grams. I've seen them breed as low as 250 grams, but from my experience, the closer to 300 grams that they are, the better chance they have because they can show dominance. And I know you're probably thinking, well, it shouldn't be that hard for them to show dominance. They're male, blah, blah, blah. That's just not how it works. I actually posted a short not that long ago of a female that as soon as I put her in there with a male, she actually took over, started grabbing him by the neck and made him tap out. So that's just how that went. So you never really know. And it wasn't that that male wasn't big. It's just that that female is very dominant. She's very dominant. I've never actually been able to house her with other females because of how dominant she is. So that's another thing you need to look for. So once you put your dragons together, usually people say put the female in with the male. I honestly think either way works. You can put the male in with the female, but again, you're probably going to have that situation where the female is like, this is my space, you're coming into it, and it's going to be a battle for territory. So what I've actually find best for me, besides putting the female in with the male, is actually putting them in a neutral location. So find a location where they're neither of them a house. And I've seen people use bathtubs. I've seen people use kiddie pools. I've seen people use plastic totes. Whatever works for you, as long as once you put them in, they know, well, I've never been here. I need to figure out where I'm at. And as the female's figuring out where she's at and the male's figuring out where they're at, they're going to realize there's another bearded dragon present, and then they're going to go through the motions. Usually that way for me works best, mainly because when I put the female in with the male, it's not so much breeding that's happening, it's a lot of dominance assertion that's happening. But when I put them in together in a neutral territory, usually it's like, hey, we met up, it's time to get it over with and separate and get done. So I usually try to do it, if I'm putting the female in with the male, I usually try to do it where they're together for one day, until the next, so at least overnight, and then I'll separate them for a couple days, and then I'll do it again. And I usually do that for about 2 weeks, and then I'll give the female after the 2 weeks, after they've been paired over and over again like that. I'll give her 2 weeks to see if she's gaining follicles, if she's getting gravid, and usually she'll let you know if you try to put her back in with the male that she's done. She doesn't want any more. She'll start getting really aggressive towards the male, and she won't even let him pin her down. So you'll know for sure that she's gravid and she's ready to go, and she doesn't need the male anymore. Don't pair the male over and over again. This is from my experience. If the female has had an infertile clutch, she is done laying eggs. She does not want anything to do with that, with laying again. There's a reason she laid an infertile clutch. There's a reason that she is not ready to lay. So just if she lays infertile, that's it. So if she lays one clutch of healthy eggs, the second clutch is infertile, no more pairing. Most people will try to put the male back in after that to see if they can get it going again. It doesn't work out every time. So in my opinion, once she's done, you're done putting them together. That's all I can tell you about that. Now, once the female gets to the point where she's looking for a place to lay her eggs, what I do is I have two methods. I either find like a 27-gallon tote that's about 18 inches deep, and I'll fill it in with dirt and sand that's moist. You want to be able to compact it, but it shouldn't like compact with water coming out of it. So you shouldn't be able to juice the sand in the soil. And I'll do about 6 to 8, maybe 10 inches if I can get enough dirt and sand of soil. That way they can get as deep as they want. Now I have some females that are really picky about where they lay their eggs. And you know, it's funny because my wife, she doesn't really care about it. But she still gives me pointers, and she's like, she makes it, she's looking from an outside perspective, and I'm trying to figure out everything from the inside of the process. So one time I had a female that she was just wasn't laying. Every time I put her in the 27-gallon tote, she was just like, no, this is not for me. She was like, maybe it's too much space for her. Maybe she needs a smaller place. That way she doesn't have as many options. I put her in a 12 quart tote that was filled to about like 3-4 inches deep, and that female laid that same like hour. It was crazy. I was like, what the heck do you know that I don't know? And she was just like, I don't know. I guess it just worked out. And I've actually had 2 or 3 females lay in that same situation, and it seems to work really well. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if sometimes you have a female that won't lay in a bigger tote, just put her in a smaller tote, give her less spaces to actually dig a hole for her eggs. I've also seen people use like 5-gallon buckets that are filled to like 6 or 8, maybe 10 inches of soil, and then same thing. But I've actually found that they're not really finding a place to start digging because it's rounded, so they don't actually have a place to start clawing. So that's what I've noticed. I have had one lay in there before, but that was like, it took her forever, like days, to figure out where she was going to lay. So while it may not work, it may work for somebody else. So this doesn't work for me. Once the eggs are laid, I incubate at 84, 84.5. Depending on where you put the eggs in the incubator, it might be like 85, 84. So I'll put my probe in the middle of the incubator, and that's usually where I have it at 84.5, 84. And then below that is going to be a little bit cooler, and above that is going to be a little bit warmer. So I don't know how many eggs you're planning on hatching, how many clutches you're planning on having, but that's just how I do it. My incubator can hold 15 clutches. So with that said, I have a pretty good gradient of 5 levels of egg crates or egg containers. So the middle one is about 84, 84, 84.5, and then below that it gets to like 84. Above that it gets to like 85. So it's a small gradient, but it's there, and it's enough to make a difference in how slow or how fast your eggs hatch. Now, I've seen people incubate like at 86 to get them to hatch closer to like day 50, but I don't recommend doing that because you're going to end up with possible issues with the eggs. Maybe they don't hatch at all. Maybe the babies come out with deformities. You don't want that. So in my opinion, I would go with 84. 85 is where they're supposed to be. I do 84 just so I can make sure that if there is a gradient in temperature, that it's not going to be over the 85. So that's just the way I do it. The eggs hatch. Woo! It's day 55, 60. Sometimes they hatch exactly at 60. Sometimes they hatch before 60. Sometimes they hatch at 65. I've even had some hatch closer to 70 days after they've been laid. It really just depends on the incubator. So if your eggs hatch, what most people do is they will put them on a rack. And this rack is going to be of plastic totes that have UVB lights and they have heat bulbs and all of that. So my setup hasn't really started yet because I don't have any babies as of right now. They're supposed to be hatching any day now. So as of this video is being filmed, I don't have any babies, but I will show you what it looks like. It's still being put together because if you remember a few videos ago, I was talking about how I needed to put it together. It's actually over here on this side, so that's why I keep looking over there. I will show you what it looks like, but just to say, this method works for me. Depending on the size of the tote, these totes that I use are like these totes are like 18 inches deep, or no, they're actually like 22 inches deep, 18 inches wide, and like 12 inches tall. And because the babies can't really jump that high, these work very good for newborn babies. They usually work all the way up until like 75 grams for individuals. So that's if you have holdbacks or something like that, and you're still trying to figure out if you're actually going to keep them or not. You're trying to keep them away from your other bearded dragons. That's one way to do it. So I'll show you. But as I'm showing you, just know that this is only temporary. I usually only, in these size totes, I only put about 5 to 10 babies. And as they start getting bigger, once they get to about 6 grams or so, I'll dwindle it down to like 3 babies per tote. And then once they get to like 10 grams, usually I start posting them online and I'll start shipping them around 10 to 15 grams, depending on how well they're eating. And it also has to do with how many times they shed. So some babies are born bigger than others. So if they've only shed once and they're already at 10 grams, obviously I'm not going to sell them yet. But if they're at 10 grams and they've shed 2 or 3 times, then it's probably a good indication that they're eating pretty well. So that's pretty much my process. Hopefully you enjoyed the clips that I showed as I was talking about it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, obviously. Once my baby bearded dragons start hatching, I will be making posts about them probably every day on Instagram and Facebook. So if you don't like my Facebook page or follow my Facebook page or Instagram page already, then go ahead and do so because it's going to get real busy on there real quick. Once the babies start hatching, I will be posting daily. I will record videos of them. You'll even see them have like pool days and stuff like that outside once it starts getting like consistently warmer. So with that said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything that I put out in the future. As always,